Today, I would like to share with you a fascinating scenario. What if the Pleistocene epoch never happened? What if the Earth never experienced the cycles of glaciation and deglaciation that shaped its landscapes, climates, and life forms? How would the world look like today? Let us start with North America. Without the Pleistocene, there would be no ice sheets covering most of Canada and the northern United States. The Great Lakes would not exist, nor would the Mississippi River and its delta. The Rocky Mountains would be higher and more rugged, as they would not have been eroded by glaciers. The climate would be warmer and wetter, with more forests and grasslands. The fauna would be very different, as many of the iconic mammals that evolved during the Pleistocene, such as mammoths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, giant sloths, and dire wolves, would not have appeared. Instead, we would see more of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as camels, horses, rhinos, tapirs, and giant beavers. Humans would have arrived later, as they would not have been able to cross the Bering Strait during the glacial periods. They would have faced more competition and predation from the diverse and abundant wildlife. Moving on to South America, we would see a similar situation. Without the Pleistocene, there would be no Andes Mountains, as they were uplifted by the tectonic forces associated with the glaciation. The Amazon basin would be smaller and less biodiverse, as it would not have received the sediments and nutrients from the Andean erosion. The climate would be hotter and drier, with more savannas and deserts. The fauna would also be different, as many of the animals that migrated from North America during the Great American Interchange, such as armadillos, sloths, anteaters, and llamas, would not have reached South America. Instead, we would see more of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as giant rodents, terror birds, and marsupials. Humans would have arrived later, as they would not have been able to cross the Panama Isthmus during the glacial periods. They would have faced more challenges and dangers from the hostile environment and the fierce animals. Next, let us look at Europe. Without the Pleistocene, there would be no Alps, as they were formed by the collision of the African and Eurasian plates during the glaciation. The Mediterranean Sea would be larger and deeper, as it would not have been cut off from the Atlantic Ocean during the glacial periods. The climate would be warmer and more stable, with less seasonal variation. The fauna would be different, as many of the animals that adapted to the cold and arid conditions of the Pleistocene, such as woolly rhinos, cave bears, cave lions, and mammoths, would not have evolved. Instead, we would see more of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as hippos, elephants, giraffes, and hyenas. Humans would have arrived later, as they would not have been able to cross the Strait of Gibraltar during the glacial periods. They would have encountered more diversity and complexity in the cultures and languages of the indigenous people. Continuing with Asia, we would see a different picture. Without the Pleistocene, there would be no Himalayas, as they were raised by the collision of the Indian-Eurasian plates during the glaciation. The Tibetan plateau would be lower and more fertile, as it would not have been uplifted and aridified by the orographic effect of the mountains. The climate would be warmer and wetter, with more monsoons and typhoons. The fauna would be different, as many of the animals that adapted to the high altitude and harsh climate of the Pleistocene, such as yaks, snow leopards, pandas, and tigers, would not have evolved. Instead, we would see more of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as rhinos, elephants, orangutans, and crocodiles. Humans would have arrived later, as they would not have been able to cross the Himalayas during the glacial periods. They would have faced more competition and conflict from the dense and diverse populations of the continent. Finally, let us examine Africa and Australia. Without the Pleistocene, these continents would be less affected by the changes in the global climate and geography. The Sahara Desert would be smaller and greener, as it would not have been expanded and desiccated by the glacial periods. The Great Rift Valley would be less pronounced, as it would not have been deepened and widened by the tectonic movements associated with the glaciation. The climate would be warmer and more humid with more rainfall and vegetation. The fauna would be similar, as many of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as lions, zebras, wildebeest, and elephants, would still dominate the African savannas. Humans would have evolved earlier, as they would have not been subjected to the environmental pressures and challenges of the Pleistocene. They would have spread faster and farther, as they would have not been hindered by the ice sheets and the sea level fluctuations. They would have reached Australia sooner, as they would not have had to wait for the land bridges to appear during the glacial periods. They would have encountered more of the animals that lived in the Pliocene, such as giant kangaroos, wombats, and marsupial lions. In conclusion, a world without the Pleistocene epoch would be very different from the one we know today. It would be a world with less ice, less mountains, less lakes, less rivers, less diversity, and less history. It would be a world with more heat, more water, more forests, more grasslands, more stability, and more simplicity. It would be a world where humans would have a different origin, a different evolution, and a different destiny. Thank you.